Even though it's been more than 8 months since gamers around the world have been following the narrative breadcrumbs of PT to speculate about the events surrounding the family murders, the reasons behind them, and the numerous symbols and hidden messages scattered around the mysterious corridor, there are still many questions left unanswered. Why does the protagonist wake up in an empty concrete room? What's the meaning of the tally marks on the wall? And most importantly, what is the real connection between the supposedly unrelated series of familicides mentioned in the radio broadcasts?
The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch.
A lot of these unsolved mysteries are just too specific and deliberate to be mere red herrings. So let me lead you through an entirely new chain of deduction that might shed some light on this yet unsolved mystery of P.T.s series of family murders. Let's start with one of the pivotal scenes, the bathroom killing. We witness what seems to be the brutal stabbing of a woman. Well, we don't actually get to see it, we just hear everything in excruciating detail. But listen to the radio broadcast in the background. What the narrator says, on the one hand it's a perfectly normal radio commentary, but on the other hand it seems to be a subliminal instruction that guides the perpetrator to his actions. Let me tell you about Project MK Ultra, an illegal clandestine government project officially launched by the CIA in 1953. It was a program of medical and psychiatric experiments on unwilling human test subjects, as well as the population of the US and Canada on a large scale, with the intent of developing procedures to be used in interrogation, torture, and espionage through various systems of mind control. It consisted of a large number of sub-projects, but one better-known series of experiments is especially interesting in the context of the events of PT. The so-called Sub-Project 68, which was led by the Scottish-born psychiatrist Donald Ewan Cameron, with one of the goals being the research and development of the Monarch programming system, a trauma-based brainwashing technique that based upon the research of SS scientist Dr. Josef Mengele's human experiments during the Holocaust. Now, the existence of these experiments has not been officially proven, since the biggest part of MK Ultra's files were destroyed by the order of the former CIA director Richard Helms. But there are numerous witnesses who claim to have been victim to MK Ultra's Monarch experiments. Most prominently Kathy O'Brien, who has given account of her experiences in the book Transformation of America. The subjects of the procedure were exposed to hallucinogenic drugs, most notably LSD, long-term isolation and sensory deprivation to create a multiple personality disorder hidden inside of the subject's unconscious. The result is a perfect sleeper cell that can be remotely activated by subliminal messages in radio or TV broadcasts or simple telephone calls, hiding among the unsuspecting population. Within the scope of MK Ultra, the CIA has also experimented with a wide range of subliminal mind control and propaganda techniques throughout the Cold War. And by the way, this is no conspiracy theory. There were a lot of broadcasts on radio and television with hidden mind control messages during the 50s and 60s, officially confirmed alongside a public apology by Bill Clinton in 1997. I will link to a video in the description that presents that in greater detail. So could the homicidal husbands actually be drones of the CIA's MK Ultra program? Kojima is shown to have a fascination for Cold War espionage conspiracy theories. Is this far-fetched, or could there be something to it? Let's see if and how we can tie this to the events of PT. Clue number 1. Subliminal messages are scattered all over the game. Not only in the bathroom scene, but also during the reports, we hear the narrator switch the tone of his voice and talk directly to the protagonist.
Touch that dial now, we're just getting started. Retrieved the rifle and shot his wife.
The game also shows messages hidden in tube TV-like screen distortions and words hidden in static.
204863. 204863. 204863.
Clue number 2. Cameron's experiments were typically carried out on patients who had entered a mental health institute for minor problems such as anxiety disorders, postpartum depression, and alcohol abuse. And when we look at the hallway, It hints at someone in this household suffering from a severe drinking problem. The talking fetus also confirms that the father was, in fact, an alcoholic.
You got fired, so you drowned your sorrows in booze. She had to get a...
Clue number 3. The people chosen were selected to be average, inconspicuous family people. When we examine the house, it's safe to assume the family to be of a somewhat wealthy middle-class status. Also, the monologue at the end of the game describes the father to be strikingly boring and average.
Dad was such a drag. Every day he'd eat the same kind of food, dress the same, sit in front of the same kind of games. Yeah, he was just that kind of guy.
Clue number 4. Sub-Project 68's test subjects are said to have been, amongst other methods, exposed to prolonged periods of extreme isolation and sensory deprivation. The protagonist in P.T. wakes up in an empty concrete room with a large number of tally marks on the wall. That could indicate that someone is counting the days of his isolation. If this is the case, it would have been a very long, very isolated confinement. Clue number 5. Monarch programming induces a split personality into the subject's mind without his or her knowledge about it. P.T. gives us repeated hints to the protagonist having more than one identity locked inside of his unconscious.
The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?
Clue number 6. To condition an acoustic cue as a trigger that activates this hidden personality, the test subjects' brains are put into a relaxed, almost hypnotic alpha wave state while being forced to listen to a repetitive audio recording over and over again. In P.T., the number 204863 seems to be that acoustic cue.
204863. 204863.
The radio report in the beginning indicates that the father of one of the mass killings was found in a state of trance, chanting those numbers over and over again. It was also said that he was heard repeating 204863 days before the killing started.
Listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell.
Clue number 7. To put the brain in such a receptive alpha wave state for easier programming, subjects were administered controlled doses of LSD. Now, within the scope of MKUltra, there are a number of CIA operations on record that experimented with the administration of LSD to the unwitting public through various distribution methods. One of those being the targeted contamination of the water supply of selected households. Do you recall the warning of the radio narrator quite in the beginning of the game? There are several signs that the protagonist is, in fact, exposed to LSD during the game, since one of its main symptoms is the enhanced perception of colors. Think about the long red corridor, where time moves faster than usual, the vision blurred. It appears a lot like an actual LSD trip. Clue number 8. Also, so far there was no explanation whatsoever for the magnetic resonance image of a human brain in the menu. One of the photo pieces is even hidden inside of that MRI picture. Hidden inside the protagonist's subconscious? This strongly hints at a medical psychiatric background, but nothing of the rest of the plot points in that direction. But if the protagonist has, in fact, been the victim of a series of traumatic mind control experiments where his brain was constantly under scientific observation, this suddenly makes a lot of sense. And since we're speaking of traumatic experiences, if the test subjects are deliberately traumatized during those experiments, at the time of the murders, the mind-controlled killer would be in the post-traumatic phase. Post-traumatic. But agreed, this is highly speculative. But since we're already hypothesizing, there is the widely accepted theory that both the numbers 204863 and the fake developer studio's name 7780S Studio hint at the same entry in the public plant transcript genome database to a tree called Populus trichocarpa, PT, more commonly known as black cottonwood. This tree grows exclusively in western North America, which the appearance of the town in the teaser at the end of the game also hints at. Now, Donald Ewan Cameron, the project leader of Subproject 68, constantly commuted between two different locations to work on his experiments: Montreal, Canada, and Albany, Oregon, which just so happens to be almost exactly in the center of populous Trichocarpa's population area. Now, this could all be completely wrong, it's a hypothesis. Well, I let you decide how much truth there is to these observations. Thanks for watching the first episode of Lore Hunt. Now it's your turn to choose our hunting grounds. Until then, remember, the truth is out there.